Lansing is a district of about 11,000 students. We are, as Itai said, above 76% of our students are BIPOC students in Lansing. We have students from 73 countries and 59 language groups. So we have a very diverse student population. In 2017, we were awarded a Teacher School Leader grant. And that Teacher School Leader Rewarding Educator Achievement and Performance was the title of it. There were two interconnected components, one quality supports for educators, and the other was to create a comprehensive HCMS or human capital management system with a focus on recruitment, onboarding, placement, retention, and promotion of teachers. We've been very fortunate to work with AIR and the GTL Center and a data-driven stakeholder engaged approach. We started talking about this in December of 2019 and then actually began the formal process with our first group and looking at our data and disaggregating our data in May of 2020. Through the grant, we hired a specialist in our HR department to help work on those processes that were needed at the human resources area, in the human resources area. We had a lot of challenges when we started. We have a very, very small HR department. It took a lot of time pulling all the data together. We had data in many different systems, as I'm sure many of you can relate to, how, you know, some of it is in paper, some of it's archived, some of it is electronic, or in systems that don't talk to each other. And that was one of the goals of the program, of the grant, to help consolidate all that and make it a little bit better. So we started putting that together into usable form. Of course, COVID was around at that time, and that made a little bit more difficult process. We also were changing leadership in the school district, but now we know pretty much what we have and what we need to gather. We looked at many of these types of data that you see here on the screen. We've pulled it together. We've even collected more data since we looked at that. We found that as we brought our group together to a focus group together to discuss and to analyze the data, we pulled in teachers, we had administrators, principals, central administrators, our teacher union president, our president, of the administrator union, and to sit down and talk about what we wanted to do, how we wanted to analyze this data. And through the GTL Center, we were able to have a great process to do this. As we look at this, we used the data tool in Lansing, and we found while 76% of our students in Lansing are BIPOC, the entire teacher career pipeline is disproportionately white starting at college. As you can see this, this is a huge issue for us. As Itai mentioned earlier, some of the reasons for this with people going into education, people leaving education, people not feeling comfortable, people not being supported, many of those issues. We also found that there was a 46 percentage point gap between the rate of BIPOC students and teachers in Lansing. As you can see, our breakdown of our students here. And as we went through and we looked at this, we came up with some key findings. And I'd like to give you just a second to maybe read down through some of those. And perhaps I'll focus on the second one. The diversity of the teacher workforce doesn't match the diversity of the population. We want our kids to be able to be with teachers who are like themselves. And it's unfortunate that we don't have that. We have that big gap. And so we're trying to find ways to to support that. Our next step was to uncover root causes. And as we went through a root cause process, and you can imagine, I mean, many of you have done root cause mapping before not in a virtual situation, but our group supported us in taking us through that system in a virtual situation because we weren't able to meet together. So we met together to identify some of these statements. We found that teachers aren't adequately prepared, schools lack effective structures, minority teachers are negatively impacted by implicit bias. There are inconsistent systems. Teachers of color are not seeing opportunities to advance into leadership positions, and teachers feel a lack of support in their buildings. We really wanted to focus on those areas. Those were some of the things that our group came up with. As we looked at those areas, the GTL Center brought in strategies, research-based strategies that have been proven, evidence-based, that have been proven that work. And we reviewed some of those. And we looked at things that might work in Lansing and might not work in Lansing to help us spark ideas in our development of an action plan. Our next session really revolved around that action planning process. We looked at all of these areas. We looked at strategies and we looked at what problems that strategy would address. And are we implementing this or a similar strategy? And we talked about that. And we were implementing some things that we've just started implementing in the last couple of years because of the grant, like a new teacher network, onboarding for our new teachers, mentors for our teachers, PLCs for our new teachers. We also looked at what stakeholders would be involved. Who would we get? Who would be the key people that we needed to have on board? And what was the priority? And what resources would be needed? Money, time, personnel, and what would be the level of impact? We talked about all of those things in that action planning session. Our next session, we applied the READY framework. We looked at the resources. We looked at the educator supports to identify what some of the problems and what some of the solutions could be. We pulled together a smaller group of key people. We decided that large group of, I believe we had 19, 20 people to start with. We decided we need some of the decision makers involved. So we pulled in a couple other people, assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction, our school improvement director. We pulled in our union leaders again, and we sat down during this time and we applied the READY framework. We looked at a Jamboard approach again. We looked at the problems, which you see in yellow there, and then some of the solutions. We looked at, we took about an hour and a half probably to work on this and to sit down in small groups and to talk about this. And some of the things that we came up with was that number one, we really needed a communication plan with whatever we do. Number two, we needed to build trust among everyone in the district. And because that was one of the things that surfaced many times about that trust factor of people not feeling comfortable, new teachers not knowing where to go to get things, teachers leaving because they didn't feel they were trusted or they didn't feel that they were supported in the buildings. So that was our process. Our next steps, we're meeting again in late August or early September to begin the actual action planning process, to take a look at those items, take a look at the teacher evaluation tool and how does that support lack of trust in the district. And so we're excited to continue with the work with that.